Welcome to the Humanergy Leadership Podcast, where we tackle your toughest leadership challenges and share practical tools to help you lead with impact.
Hey everybody, Mimi with Humanergy here. This is another of our free workshop series. This is Lance Satterthwaite delivering on delegation that develops people. If you're interested in joining us for any of our free workshops, you can find a link to register at humanergy.com in the free workshops section.
And welcome, everybody. So today's topic surrounding delegation is really a frequent theme that pops up a lot in our coaching conversations that we have with our clients. And today we're going to explore several components around delegation, including just trying to overview and define what it is and why it's important, and then spend time on the barriers to delegation, some common barriers, as well as how can we actually overcome some of those barriers. And again, the objective, and it's interesting reading through the chats. So many of you mentioned delegation being important around developing people, and that's really going to be a part of what I'm going to hammer home today. So let's start with what is delegation in the first place. And I really do believe at the heart of delegation, it is either the sharing or the transferring of ownership to people. And this ownership is really you're transferring, obtaining not just the goals that need to be achieved, but really the journey along the way, right? And so you're looking at things like, the necessary tasks that have to be completed, as well as some of the decisions along the way, and really transferring that ownership. I do believe true empowerment of others occurs when this ownership is transferred well. So, in the spirit of just this word transferring, if you think of it a bit like a baton in track and field, and what that suggests is it really requires a coordination between the person handing off the baton as well as the person receiving it, so that it doesn't get dropped, right? And so that we're able to actually cross the finish line in the desired time frame. So, what does all this mean? It means that we simply can't chuck the baton towards somebody's way, cross our fingers, and hope that they catch it. And it also doesn't mean assume that they know what to do once they receive the baton. And so, this really needs to be a partnership between delegator, delegatee, as well as the organization. And so, if we take this idea around why delegate, it's really around it's a win-win-win, or it should be a win-win-win if we do this well. The win for the delegator does include things like managing your own workload and capacity, helping you work at the right level, as well as eventually, hopefully, it reduces stress. And, I always joke with people, it's like, and hopefully at some point you get to go on these wonderful things called vacations and not be interrupted or not even feel the need to check in. So the win for the delegatee is often around, yes, it's developing their skill set. It allows them to help earn trust with the delegator and other stakeholders. Hopefully, it's in building their own confidence level, and at the same time, helping to establish them in their career path, right? And so hopefully it opens and unlocks some opportunities, maybe even some promotions as time goes on for the person. And then the win for the organization tends to be around, we do have to get things done. We do need to accomplish our goals. And it also helps manage and mitigate some of the risk by having both cross training and backups. The other thing, often when there's a different set of eyes on whether it's a project or a process, something along those lines, it actually can lead to innovation and creativity. And so I think there's lots of wins all across the board there. So, if you only think of delegation as a strategy for your managing your own time and your capacity, I just want to emphasize this idea. You're neglecting a key part of this delegation equation, and that is the development of your people and the organization. And so, just it's critical to keep that in mind as we start talking about some of the barriers. So, you may have talked about some barriers in your breakout room. Some of this may be what you identified, and I know there's other ones. And what I'm going to highlight today are these four barriers. One, it takes time. Two, you actually like to do the work and don't want to let go of it. You may not trust that it's going to get done well or done on time. and you fear losing control. So we'll take a look at each of these barriers and look at some thought processes to overcome them. So let's start with that first barrier. It takes time. And in the reality, you actually might be able to do it better and faster than what the delegatee could do. And I just want to validate that yes, delegation 100% takes time. And while it's not in the scope of today's presentation, I do want to mention Humanergy. We do have a resource and a training specifically around a framework around how to delegate so that it's effective and efficient. I'm not going to cover that today, but we do have that as a resource. For today's presentation, though, I do want to share a few ideas just to combat this idea of it takes time. And that really goes back to this list, which is why are we delegating in the first place? And so if I take this list and say, you have to really deeply believe and sometimes repeatedly remind yourself that it's worth the effort, right? That these are the end goals we're trying to achieve in delegation. And so when you believe that, you actually think of it an investment, right? It's going to pay off in the future and it's going to pay off long term. And I think it really does help to overcome some of this barrier around making the time to do this in the first place. The other part around this barrier is, we have to decide then what it is, if it takes time, it's like what it is that should go on and off the plate and what types of things should we actually delegate. And I always think the question of, well, is this a repeatable item or is this just a one off? And so if it's a skill or a task that's used often enough, it's worth delegating to free up not just your time, but it's going to develop somebody's skill set and it's going to be helpful for the organization from a cross training perspective. If the answer, however, it's like it's something that doesn't occur very much or just not very often, you may end up just deciding this one is better to keep on your plate for you to take care of and not delegate. So let's look at the next barrier, which is you like to do the work and you don't want to let go of it. And one question that I think is slightly provocative and at least something to think about is, are you addicted to the emergency room? So what do I mean by that? For some people, especially if there are people that are used to doing the work and now they're more responsible for leading the work, they realize that they like to fight the fires. They like to resolve the crisis. And what they find then in their current role is that there's less immediate job satisfaction in not doing that day to day tactical work. And so, as a person elevates in their organization, it actually requires them to be more strategic, be more future focused, spend more time in meetings, and improve items like systems or processes. And again, all that's important work, but it takes a lot more time to see the tangible progress and see the results of that. And so your job right now may actually be more of a general practitioner than working in the emergency room. And you are going to have to reconcile what that means for your own job satisfaction. The other question that I think is important around this, I like to do the work, is well, what work is it that you're actually being paid to do? And so, a way of answering that question is to actually think of it in dollars and cents. And so, if you were to take your salary, your benefits, and eventually boil that down into like an hourly wage, the question is, could you justify that the work you're doing actually is earning that salary? And so when I say this, I'm not trying to assign judgment to people's pay rate, but I do think a lot of people in leadership roles find that they may be doing a lot of $15 an hour work instead of what they're assigned to do, whether that's, 25, 50, 75, or maybe more dollar an hour work. So are you doing the job that you're actually hired to do? And so then if you say maybe not, then you're going to have to determine, well, what work should you not be doing and create a plan to get that one off your plate. How are you going to delegate or say no to that? I also think in this particular area, sometimes it also means not enabling somebody that's not doing their job. Muster up the courage, go have the difficult conversation with them, hold people accountable to do their jobs, right? Zero in on doing the work that you are most uniquely qualified to do. So let's go to the next barrier, not trusting that the work is going to get done or done right. And so let's go back to the idea that I started with around delegation as a partnership. And as a part of that partnership, it really should be safe for all, the delegator, the delegatee, and the organization themselves. So therefore, it's important to find the right zone, which is how hands-on should this delegation be? How hands-off should this delegation be? And this decision is based on a lot of factors, and I just want to share a few of them. One is around this particular item, what is the level of risk? What is the level of complexity? And then how much trust do you really have in the delegatee? And again, that's based on factors like what is their real knowledge and experience level with whatever that job is at hand? What is their past performance? And even how much time, how well do you know this person? How much time have you actually spent with this person? So, in the best of situations, the delegator and the delegatee would actually mutually determine up front where would we put this particular delegation to right size it. And so, without this alignment, the delegator could become on either too hands on or too hands off for the delegatee, and it becomes out of touch for what's needed to be most effective in that situation. So, an overly hands on approach, we know this term micromanage, and that is what the delegatee is going to feel, right? It will create potentially some resentment. It will send a message that the delegator does not trust the delegatee. And while the results might get achieved in that circumstance, being hands on, the caution there is that you actually potentially block this transfer of ownership or you block opportunities for learning and growth to occur. On the flip side, if you go to the other end and become too hands off, it can actually result in the delegatee being either lost, confused, or less confident. And so this actually can prevent results from occurring in the desired time frame. And, I always think delegation is you're trying to find the stretch zone, not the danger zone. And so while there has to be some tolerance for mistakes, some tolerance for errors, so that learning can actually take place, we should not create situations or put people in situations or the organization in unnecessary harm or significant risk. The last one barrier I want to talk about is the fear of losing control. And to overcome this, I think you do need to ask yourself, what is it that you need to let go of? I know a lot of people I work with self-describe as being control freaks. And, they say, I want to be heavily involved or I really want to know what's going on under my purview. And in these situations, they actually start becoming the bottleneck where everything needs to be run by them. Every decision needs to be run by them. And all of a sudden, what that means is you're actually not developing people the way you actually need to. So you have to be willing to let go sometimes of this and fight the urge. And I think one of the questions variations is you have to actually determine what is it that you want to know versus what is it that you actually need to know in your role and really clarify that. So once you're able to begin to sort that out, you need to determine things like what is the level of autonomy I'm giving to people around the decisions that they have to make and what needs to be communicated back to you and by when. So, one of the effective tools that we actually have, and I'll show you here in a second, is called the authority matrix. And I just want to explain it before I show you the sheet. It really, if you think of things as a level A, B, and C, a level A is, you know what, just go and do it, and you don't need to tell me about it. The delegatee is fully empowered to make these types of decisions, and they are trusted to do so is a part of their role. A level B is do it and then afterwards tell me that you did it. And again, what that means is they don't have to consult ahead of time, yet there is a need to inform after the fact. And again, why would that be the case? Well, it might be because the delegator needs to know the information in order to do their job. Or maybe there is potential risk, and this is about proactively communicating, giving a heads up to that risk. It's also a good way to double check or check for alignment and allows for ongoing coaching and development conversations to happen. And it actually is a stepping stone means for building trust on the way to level A items. Then level C is let's discuss it beforehand. And then we're going to either say, you own this decision, we own this decision, or I, as the delegator, own the decision. And again, the factors involved with that include the things we've already talked about risk, complexity, experience, how much trust that you have, all play a role and determine what things are happening in level C. So I'm going to share this authority matrix sheet, and again, you'll see some of those items across the top there. It doesn't say level A, B, and C, but you'll be able to see that. But then on the left-hand side, what you're going to see is some categories that are really quite common in the workplace. So what level of decision making am I empowering somebody around things like spending levels or making changes in the organization structure or systems and processes? What sort of people decisions am I giving people around either hiring or firing, promoting, progressive discipline actions? What types of meetings should be occurring and who should be leading those? And then there's lots of other, I think, decisions and topics that a delegator and a delegatee could define and use this worksheet. A link to this tool is going to be found in the chat feature here. Or if you want to receive a copy of this, please let us know. We'll be happy to send that into your inbox. I will say a lot of our clients find that it's a great way to spark meaningful conversations between delegators and delegatees about the level of empowerment and about the level of ownership. So, the last thing I want to say on this part of it is if you're using delegation to actually develop people, as time goes on, you're going to see things move from level C to level B and then into level A. So it's actually a really great way to track progress on somebody's development over the course of time. And I think that progression begins to mean one, that you actually are more aligned around decision making and decision making criteria. Two, you've actually gained more trust in the decision making ability of the delegatee, and that the delegatee has also gained some trust and confidence in their own decision making. Right. And I think lastly, it also means we are putting people in those stretch zones where they can make mistakes. We can use those as learning opportunities for alignment, for growth and development. So, last thing, in conclusion, I just want to offer I do hope today's talk gives you both some thinking, some tools to overcome some of those barriers around delegation. When you're able to use delegation not only to manage your own workload, but also to develop people in the organization, I think that's really when you do achieve the true win of delegation. So, wish you all the best in transferring this ownership and empowering people to work at the right level and do the right work. Thank you and take care.
That was the Humanergy Leadership Podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe and visit humanergy.com for many more resources.